What's up, everybody? If you're in the chats, let me know if you can hear everything. It's your favorite combo here. You got eRoo, me, and we got Max, Unusual Markets, or you guys might know him as Trades and Gains. We are live for our closing bell show. It is June 25th, the Wednesday of 2025. It's about 12:34 here on the West Coast, so we've got about 25 minutes till market close. And, just as always, we want to go through some things, talk a little bit about what's coming up in terms of our, put this up, in terms of the upcoming earnings and anything in terms of economic news that we want to keep an eye out for so that you guys can make some solid trades. Another thing too as well, Max has been recently doing his own streams as well on Twitch. So if you guys do have, I will make sure to drop those links as well. If you go into the description box below, we've already got his Substack and his YouTube, and as well as our Stacks Beehive. And I'll make sure that we drop those live links in there for you guys as well. Let's real quick for this week for our earnings. We got Micron coming up right after close. Yesterday we had FedEx. FedEx took a little dump afterwards, citing some tariff issues and the shipping in terms of that. BlackBerry had a little jump. I think they reported some better numbers than expected. We got to take a look over at General Mills, which was reported earlier today. I didn't take a look at that just yet. But Micron is the big one that we're going to keep an eye on. And then let's also talk a little bit about Nike coming up on Thursday. So those are our main ones that we're going to get into. In terms of economic news, you got anything for us, Max, that you want to share? Can you hear me?
No. So economic news front, the only thing we've had so far this week is PMI. That came in fine. That's why we've been seeing the market pump. In terms of Powell's testimony, he's just keeping the same wait and see policy. The ceasefire was the big catalyst that has sent the market into what we've seen as a spike so far. But again, SPY has some psychological levels it can't get past. We just saw a huge rejection off 607.35. It failed to maintain its VWAP, and it just completely tanked through its EMAs and market lows, and even low of the day at this point. Or not low of the day, it's headed towards its low of the day at this point. So it's a choppy week. It's a PCE week, of course. PCE is going to come in hot, probably. Very low chance of it being able to come in cold from what we're seeing from an economic data front to all of the other indicators that make up PCE. So this, I would expect, is going to be a hot report coming in. But yeah, that's pretty much all we really have going on the economic side. It's more of an earnings week this week with Nike. I believe Walmart is also reporting, if I'm not mistaken.
Are they?
I don't know. There's like there's some interesting companies reporting this week though.
I don't think Walmart is.
I know Nike is, right?
Nike is. But the main one we want to focus on right now is Micron, that's coming in after close.
It tanked earlier.
Well, first off, if you guys look at it from back in April after the tariff news, it's just been on this upward leg. And another thing to consider too is we had this gap from back in July of 2024, and we've basically come back to fill that gap, and now we're up at the top of that. One of the things I really don't love about this right now is that a lot of our indicators show that it's highly overbought. So a drop could, or at least a pullback could be very likely at this point. But look at how quickly and how fast, if you got down in here around that 59 range, or even let's just say 64, where there started to be a little bit more buying, you're already up 100% at this point, trading at 126 now. So, the Micron's jumped up quite a bit since that. And one of the things I wanted to point out here, what's causing it to run up? Well, we also just today had NVIDIA approaching these all-time highs, and just peaked up above it a little bit here. And I've had this chart on my trading view for a little bit. I originally had the original Wyckoff accumulation here, but I kind of want to go with the spring action version of it, as you can see, where we had this spring that we dropped down below, and now we're seeing this jump across the creek, a little bit of a last point of supply, and more signs of strength as we approach the highs of this. So definitely could see NVIDIA go a little bit higher, create a little bit of consolidation before it heads up further. But you'll see, compared to Wyckoff's charts here, quite a bit of similarity. Obviously, it's never just one-to-one, but we do have, I would say, this area right here is very similar. Oop, why is this lagging like that? This area right here where it dropped down is very similar to this area where it dropped down, where we see our spring. So NVIDIA very likely could go a bit higher. I do believe that right now we're feeding off of the ceasefire news, but my personal thoughts are that the news right now is really just hype. There's still a very good possibility that war can still happen, and ultimately that could be no more reason for the fear to come back into the market. Another reason why we're seeing these all-time highs as well is the dollar index has dropped quite significantly. So since January of this year, we've seen right now, and we're approaching these lows for the dollar index in terms of all this time. Since March of 2022, we haven't seen the dollar index down here. It's now below 100. And it does look like it's headed down further, and the de-dollarization and the weakness of the dollar is starting to show. We had all this bit of a distribution up top here as well. So a lot of forces in play when it comes down to it. And again, like we said, we got PCE coming up. So there are other factors that lead into the dollar getting weaker and potentially this more inflation fears coming back into the markets. Let's see, what else was I going to talk about here? The IWM. We saw a lot of IWM puts coming in, and it's not at the all-time highs, but we are seeing that it had a little bit of a V-shaped recovery, a little bit of head and shoulders pattern. But what's coming in with our stacks right now is showing quite a bit of fear coming in for IWM. So you'll see here if I pull up, let me pull this over here. IWM puts just coming in hot, 1104 today. A lot of big money ones coming in earlier in the day, earlier in the week. So if I just go big money as well, more puts than calls in terms of it. So small caps are definitely going to suffer a little bit more in these situations. All right, we want to talk about MU. I personally was looking at the chart, and the play would have been to get into MU earlier, just because if you were able to get into earlier, you could have played your run up. And right now, with it being in the gap, with a lot of the pump coming from NVIDIA hitting highs, from the expectations of earnings to be great. Micron, you got to take a look at the IV. We always remind you guys about that. Check out what the IV is saying. In terms of what Stacks is saying, though, here, if I go and I filter for what's being bought right now, it is, let me go just this last week, what we see. Definitely more on the bullish side, but you got to keep in mind that's partly with the run up as well. we don't see too many big money situations coming in. 100K, 100K, 200K here. Nothing in terms of huge that really sticks out to me. If I just go ahead and reset the time frame and look at what big money has to say, the last purchase about a week ago, this 122, that's already up about what, $4 or $5 since then, and that strike of 125 is now technically in the money. What do you think, Max?
So it looks like I'll just do the usual like breakdown I do. So Q3 earnings after close, analyst consensus, we have EPS coming in at 160. Mind you, we were only at 62 cents a year ago. So that's a substantial year over year jump. For their revenue, we're expecting a 30% rise, reaching about 8.9 billion. So that's 30% year over year. Options market and implied volatility. Traders are expecting a plus or minus $10 move for MU. So our post earnings range that we're looking at is between $118 to $138. So that is one thing to keep in mind as well. Our valuation is we have a PE of 20x versus the industry standard of 18x, suggesting a modest premium underpinned by growth expectations. And forward EPS is projected to grow 75% next year from $6 to $10.67. Now, our potential upside triggers are AI and data center strength. Beating EPS and revenue forecasts, that has played a factor, but if you were on our stream earlier, we went back and looked, Eric, at some of like the posts, what happened after earnings, and we saw some substantial drops, even if they beat on some good surprises as well. Bullish guidance, if MU, this is the big thing, and I think this is why we're seeing that pop and drop happen, is forward guidance. They need to raise forward guidance for Q4. That's the industry standard right now. That is what anyone who's in the semi space who are beating earnings and having an earnings run up, they are increasing their guidance for Q4 and the rest of the year. Now, some potential risks you need to be aware of. Disappointing guidance. Just let's get right into it. If they do not give guidance or it comes underneath what Wall Street's expecting, especially with consumer PC or smartphone demand, this could weigh heavily there. Thin margins. So if their margins aren't coming in to where people are happy, it won't be great. And then buy the news fatigue. MU's up 50% year to date. Even a beat might not push it higher if expectations, because you have to think about it, even if they raise expectations, it could be what Wall Street was expecting because of the aggressive run up it's had so far year to date. So those are really the highlights of what's coming into this MU earnings. So it'll be interesting to see more so their forward guidance, because they have beat earnings every session in the last year, I believe.
Yep. If you look at all these, let me scoot a bit to the left. If you look at all these green E's from earnings, and just like Max had said, we had a few here where, yes, earnings was great, but it still dropped. Earning was good. This one jumped. But this one right here had a huge drop after hours, and then, it's recovered a little bit. Same with this one. Big dump right afterwards.
Yeah,
so that's
the only one that beat was a 226% surprise, by the way. Like, that was the only one that had like a substantial pop of any kind. But they also beat expectations by 226%. So it's like, if you beat by 226, you're damn right you're gonna see a pop after that report comes out,
Yep. So I mean, semiconductors, obviously a very hot sector at this point, but we need to understand with a lot of this pump right now is tied to Nvidia reaching those all-time highs. If you look at SMH, which is the semiconductor ETF as well, this one's reaching and getting close to those all-time highs. And again, we are going into earnings season again, reports from Q2. So, the question is, is all that tariff and the Middle East tensions, are those concerns and those uncertainties gone, which allows a lot of this start to run as well. And I know we've mentioned over the last couple of lives as well, our M2 money fund is continuing to print money at this point, whether it is that we are preparing for war or we are preparing to try to print our way out of our debt. It is part of the cycle of things, and that could be another reason, another thing that pumps the markets a bit higher. So keep that in mind too. Next, what we've got on is Nike. I think if you look one or two live sessions back, we had a huge conversation about Nike and in terms of the NBA. Dude, I swear I said something about as well Tyrese having to play through the calf strain and worrying about the Achilles, and look what happened. Prayers up for him. Really hoping that the NBA figures out what needs to happen to keep their players healthy. But in terms of Nike, we've had the conversation of how Nike is not exactly losing a ton of market share, but they are starting to struggle in terms of getting quality product to their consumers with the tariffs and having to figure out how to they've already raised a lot of their shoe prices and their clothes and stuff like that. And you can see over the since COVID happened and we had a huge pump in the markets, it's kind of just dropped at this point. We do have this bit of a falling wedge that you can see here as well. So if it is able to attack that upper end of it and possibly head a little bit further up, but again, it is trading and it is having its struggles.
Do you want the rundown?
Yes, as always.
All right, so analyst expectations and consensus for fiscal Q4 EPS, we're expecting 12 cents to 13 cents. Doesn't sound bad, right? Well, what if I told you that it was $1.01 a year ago? This marks a year-over-year decline of around 88%, by the way. Not great, Revenue's expected to fall 15% year over year as well, to 10.7 billion. And mind you, they reported at around 11.3 billion last time. The segment breakdown here: footwear, they're looking down 15%, apparel down 11.5%, equipment down 4.8%, and Converse down 10.8%. For regionals, North America, we're expecting down 15%. EMEA, we're expecting down 14%. APAC and LATAM, we're expecting down 12%. And Greater China, we're expecting down 20%. Now, some potential upside triggers here. A surprise upside beat, especially if EPS or revenue decline is less severe than expected. Inventory management clarity. New CEO Elliott Hill must articulate a clear timeline on cleaning outdated stock and pooling inventories. Because if you think about it, that's one of their big drawbacks. They just have a lot of shit that no one wants to buy that just sits on shelves for years. Strategic investments as well. Continued marketing, R&D, and rollout of innovation. Examples: the Vaporfly, key franchises, different concept stores. You get the idea, right? And this could reassure investors of durability and brand strength, because the one thing that is interesting is if you track professional athletes, less and less athletes are looking at Nike as the holy grail. Cooper Flag, who's going to be the #1 pick, signed with New Balance. So they're losing marquee athletes that would increase their brand recognition. And Ja Morant, for example, has been now described as a detriment to the Grizzlies, and that's one of their marquee athletes. So that's one thing to think about. But there's also bullish commentary that can come into play. So any signs of stabilization in a restocking cycle beginning could aid the sentiment here. Now, our downside, again, we have tariff impact and macro headwinds. Down 20% China tariffs and persistent global softness weigh on margins and sentiment. And I don't know if those are fully priced in yet. So that's one thing you need to be aware of, is like these tariffs may not be priced in fully. So we could see a very brutal drop. 15% a drop on revenue could be very, very fucking conservative. Like that's what you need to understand. And then weak guidance. If management signals a Q1 softening or extends timeline for recovery, definitely expect that heavy sell-off. And then valuation concerns. It has a 22x forward earnings. And mind you, MU had a 20x, and MU is in a much more promising sector, which isn't consumer sales right now. Nike is near historical lows, and failure to show traction could puncture that optimism for a lot of investors. So that's really where these are gonna that's really what you need to understand going into this Nike earnings. I know a lot of it seems like it's just financials, but when it comes to consumer demand, there has to be a balance of like what you have in stock versus what's in rotation. And that's one of Nike's biggest detriments right now, because then that's less room they have to stock new inventory, to do new rollouts, and continue to increase their revenue. So really them becoming a marquee holder in some kind of space in the fitness world and shoe world right now is going to be key for their survival, if we're being honest. Because I think last time we were looking at this, it was almost at like 75 a share.
Yep.
So we're down like $15, and that was 6 weeks ago when we talked about this, I think.
Yep. Yeah. If you quickly peek over at stacks, there are two unusual purchase, or one's a sell of puts, but the other one is a buy of puts actually for the end of this week. This one's the one that really sticks out to me. It could be a protection against and a hedge against something they have in their portfolio, but 173,000 of the 54 puts being purchased, that's definitely definitely something to consider. 35 cents per share in terms of that contract, 4,945 contracts purchased. So, if you're a gambling man, that's probably the one I would take a look at. See, maybe there is, like we said, the the tariff news still hasn't fully been priced in, and there is going to be even more pain to come for Nike. That would be the position to be looking at. The other one up here, just because that one is very much short term, right? You can see the hourglass on the right for our signals. That's the thing that sticks out to me in terms of this earnings. In terms of the purchasing on the side, we have a little bit of buying going on, but nothing major in here. While it is tens of millions of dollars on the total premium, there isn't anything that makes me say they're buying heavy in Nike right now. So, and just so you guys also see, I like to bring this up anytime that I do see the pattern. The Wall Street psychology of a market cycle that you guys can see over here, with Nike absolutely taking exactly that shape as well, where you have this huge pump up to the top, where you see euphoria, the thrill of the markets going up higher, and you can see that was in 2021 when we had a huge pump in the markets. Then we have this drop, and just all the way down, came crashing down. If you do consider it from the top to where we are at the bottoms, we're down 67%. So that's 2/3 of the price. It was as high as $169, $170 at one point, and now we're down to that $50 to $60 range. And that's where you see, the panic, I do believe, has already happened a bit, capitulation. We're at that anger phase right now. So we could see this just kind of chop around down here, maybe dip a little bit lower is, in due time is what I expect. Get
Yeah.
down below that $53 range before it starts to come back just a little bit. But, Nike's got some work to do. And a big sign, one thing I like to do is when, just like I like to give you guys things you can do as a consumer to try and get an idea of what's going on in the markets. If you happen to live in a fairly populated area, go check out the discount stores. In the past, I used to go to like Ross and Marshalls, TJ Maxx, and they rarely would have good Nike shoes on the shelves. Okay, and Nike has this way where they, ooh, that's good. That's good to see. VIX just popping down lower, so that means we're seeing a relaxation of the VIX, meaning stocks are going to go a little bit higher at this point. But in terms of what I see in the discount stores, are you seeing Nike selling some of the better shoes off to it? Do you see some of the top of the line, Nike shoes being sold at the discount stores, meaning that they couldn't get rid of them on their own? Another thing as well is going to something like Dick's Sporting Goods. You can go and you can filter and see what the biggest discounts that they're offering, especially right
Yeah.
now at the end of the season. There's a lot of top of the line LeBrons and Kevin Durant shoes, which are the top basketball shoes that they sell, being sold at a huge discount at 40, 50, 60% off at this point. Generally, meaning, yes, they're trying to get rid of their stock, but also they couldn't get rid of it earlier. And what are the size runs on them? Do they have a lot of, various sizes still available? Or, if they really got rid of their stock, it's only going to be the huge and the tiny sizes still left over. So if there's only size 13, 14 left, okay, they went through it and they got rid of them. But like we said, Nike, very interesting company to see. They are doing, with their new CEO, they are doing some things to try to fix the issues that they're getting. But one thing to kind of look at here with the psychology chart is that very likely we're going to consolidate back around where previous prices were, and that's, I would point out over here on the left, that's kind of where we're at. We could even possibly dip a little bit lower into it. So I would definitely say I would not be surprised to see Nike trading in that $50 range, in the upcoming months, if not the next year or so. So it's just
Yeah.
something to consider. Nike, a bit more bearish on it just because it has a lot of headwinds. And another thing as well to consider is that, yeah, NBA season did just end. Yeah, running is a big portion of it. Jordans are a portion of it. They do have some new. I think they just gave Caitlin Clark a contract as well. WNBA is on the up and up, but they still got to figure out how they can get the consumer back on their side because a lot of people now are looking to other brands to fulfill their needs when it comes down to their shoes. It'd be interesting if you guys are in the chat or are in our chat right now. Comment, what's the last pair of shoes that you bought? Were they Nikes or are you looking at something else? I know On, Hoka, Asics. There's a lot of other people, other brands that are being purchased. Obviously our viewers are going to be of a certain demographic. Especially with what I see on YouTube. But let me know what are the shoes that you just recently purchased or have purchased, and get an idea of what our side of the market looks like. Yeah, Pumas, right? Did you just my wife just bought a pair of Converses. Technically, Converse is a part of Nike. If you didn't know, Converse and Hurley are also owned by Nike. So just so you guys happen to know that. All right. I think General Mills was GIS. General Mills.
Yeah, they slipped heavy, didn't they?
Yeah, that looks like they dropped.
Yeah,
They
they
beat earnings, I see. They beat earnings. Revenue was 0.64 off, so but they dropped. They dropped from 53 down to 50, so not the biggest. About 5%. Yeah, Puma, Tigers A6, Panda Dunks. I like that. A6. People still wearing Vans. Yeah, exactly. Very good to know. So yeah, Nike doesn't have that. Not everybody's purchasing Nikes. If you can understand that too. General Mills. Do you got any news about General Mills? It's always interesting to see what the food.
Yeah, so it looks like I was going through just kind of the recap of like everything that released today. And they were actually one of the first stories that hit my feed. Let me go ahead and pull this up for y'all and kind of just give you the quick rundown. So it looks like their annual profit forecast came in way under the expectation, right? Um, and it was the latest major food company to signal weakness in snacking and consumer packaged goods. The Pillsbury owner's full year profit forecast was weaker than expected as consumers pulled back on buying snacks and refrigerated baked goods last quarter. Net sales in North America declined 10%, though sales in its pet segment rose 12%, Reuters reported. General Mills expected adjusted profits to be down 10% to 15% for the full year. A colleague, Brooke De Palma, reported that consumers have become choosier about spending on snacks, a trend that has only gotten worse as the years go on. Shoppers have been buying less, searching for better deals, making fewer impulse purchases, and trading down to private label brands more often as tariff uncertainty and inflation shape the spending patterns. General Mills stock fell over 3% following the release of its fiscal fourth quarter results. So it looks like they aren't in the same position as Costco, where we saw Costco rise despite tariff concerns. And again, guys, this is where we talk about Costco having the ability to, if they don't like the tariff on something, they will replace you with another thing.
Mm-hmm.
And their consumers won't care, because you want to know why people go to Costco for bulk, right? They don't care what it's bulk of, they care what it's bulk in. And then Micron, it looks like it just zoomed.
Yeah.
But as we've seen with Micron, it zooms and then it falls off a fucking cliff.
Yeah,
So
I think it's gonna. I have a feeling that in the next few days we'll probably see it start to sell off a little bit after this news has hit.
it's that forward guidance.
You know. Yeah, the Micron had great earnings. 11 bill was what I think I saw. EPS beat $2.44 over the 2.14, which was expected. Nice. Yeah. So it's headed up toward that little bit of consolidation that happened in July last year. So keep in mind, though, it's one of those things where it might pop right now overnight. Big institutions will make their trades.
What do people say? The first move is usually the wrong move.
Yeah, and it's always worrisome when they're supposed to report at here 1:15 on the West Coast, so 15 minutes after close, and you see a huge move right before it. But it does look like that the report is out. So
yeah, that's the nice part about trading, to be honest, is it'll pop up like a little red bubble on the flash thing.
Yeah. Well, good. I mean, if you did get into Micron, great job. I was saying that with the run up and with a lot of my indicators looking so high up, the downside, the risk is for it to drop to the downside. And like we said as well, yes, it had a double beat in the earnings, but for example, some of the previous earnings where that did happen as well. Look at this one here, where it had a single, earnings beat, but not revenue. You saw it drop significantly. So that's where the risk lies when it comes down to earnings. It's always a little bit of a gamble, unless you happen to have some sort of insider news and insights into what's going on. Stacks wasn't exactly completely definite on it either, which is one of those situations that makes me sit on the sidelines instead. Let's see. Those are the main ones for earnings. If you guys have anything else you want us to take a look at, let us know. We're more than happy to pull that up while we're still on the stream. I know Coinbase and MicroStrategy are popular ones, so I'll pull that up right now here. Coinbase had a lot of selling back in the day where they sold off before the drop. We are seeing a little bit of a head and shoulders type of look right now too. Coinbase makes a lot of its money off of the fees that it charges from people buying and selling crypto. So the big move that we most recently saw had to do with the was it the laws that were passed? I think the Senate passed something that allows the trading. It's more of the actual regulation of things, but in a sense allowing it to become more mainstream. MicroStrategy, same thing. We've seen quite a bit of. Well, we talked about this. MicroStrategy, we tend to see a lot of short-term stuff when it comes down to the buying of options on stacks. I've still had this charted out. I think it's headed up further in time, but again, it's just chopping around at this upper bound of things. But it looks like it's still fairly strong. It could head back up in due time.
We got a request for Dollar General from Jean. He was actually he was able to make Jean, what was your return on those SPY puts we got you into? I think he did like 120%. And we did that on live stream today.
Dollar General announces American Red Cross partnership extension. Goldman Sachs downgrades their rating.
Yeah, he
I
did
mean,
120%.
I think you guys can understand. Look at this weekly chart of Dollar General right here. What does that look like? Right? Don't make me go back to Nike's chart to copy that over. But we got this market psychology chart exactly. Pump and dump. Right now it's in that fear and anger stage. But we do see a little bit of a pump back up. Weekly, fairly on the fairly higher end of our indicators. Same with our daily too. So with this little pump that we see here, would not be surprised to see it come back, fill in that gap before it makes a decision as to what direction it might go. Let's take a quick look over at stacks though, because that usually gives us a better idea of what to expect. DG. Not too much activity this month. Oh, we did see some buying today. 40 mil, 40 mil. And earlier in this week. So they're buying pretty heavy for DG when it comes down to just this last week. But we just see some puts being purchased here, but nothing very, too indicative of what exactly is going on with it though. So stacks doesn't have any definitive analysis for us.
No. Dollar General's a weird one too, where it'll get momentum, but it's based on like impending news. Like you'll find an article literally a day later where it's like, they did this, and you're like, oh, well, fuck. Like, well, no wonder it ran. Um, but yeah, so today we just talked about Nvidia because we saw some kind of weird put walls being built. AMD, we had a nice 400% gainer that we found yesterday. We found multiple sweeps for the 134s. You could have bought them for about $39 a contract, 0.39, so 39 cents. This morning they opened up at about $1.62 per contract. So nice little gain. Congrats to everyone who took that. Today we had a 120% SPY short, so that we caught on live as well. So congrats to everybody on that as well.
If you take a quick look over at stacks, it's always good to see what's coming in after the bell. Just had quite a bit of SPY puts being purchased at this point. Especially as we start to tap closer to all-time highs. You can expect as well the first move when it hits those highs is people are going to hit sell because they wish they had sold earlier. They wish they sold at all-time highs previously. Then the question is, if markets do push higher, then you start to see shorts getting out of their position. So that's something to consider. Definitely SPY puts. We got some silver puts here. This semiconductor ETF SMH very likely playing along with Micron with MU and their earnings, so that's something to consider there too. And I do want to also point out as well, didn't have too many stacks AI prints this month. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Quite a few of these saw some decent gains, and then they've retraced a little bit at this point. I think Riot right here is waiting for a move. PDD, I would say Chemo has quite a bit of confidence right now in some of the Chinese stocks. I'm expecting that they're probably going to, I think, create some more stimulus for their economy. It's been it's been kind of quiet in terms of it so far. So very likely we'll see something with BABA, PDD, JD, some of those Chinese stocks. If you guys are in the chat right now, you guys still watching, go ahead and comment stacks for me so we get an idea of what's going on. Hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, hit subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way, when you guys, whenever we have our Wednesday live stream, it'll notify you directly on your phone or wherever you're at, push notification to you, so you can jump in on those streams with us. You won't miss any of these coming up. Just saw some QQQ puts being purchased. Big money, 3.8 mil. 10,000 contracts right there.
Get loud.
And think of it this way. QQQ just hit new all-time highs today, right?
Yep.
So,
That's expected.
Like I said, QQQ hitting these all-time highs, you're expecting it to come back down a little bit before it goes up further. So just something to consider when it comes down to these indices and the natural movement. So for example, previous all-time highs here, okay, you see a pullback before it goes up higher. All-time highs here, see a little pullback down there. All-time highs here, peaked up, chopped around, came back down. So you can take a look at previous situations and you're generally going to see, and if it does go up higher, in due time it comes back down, takes up the liquidity right below it before it goes up further. So
oh, wow.
What's up?
Did you see the QQ, our biggest print for today?
No, let's go back to
someone spent 181 million on QQQ $500 puts for December 19th of 2025. And then under that, we have 165 million on SPY 560 puts.
Yeah.
That is spicy, spicy.
That's quite a bit of money right there. So they're expecting that. I mean, I think that in a sense gives an indication that, maybe we will see the recession fully play out this year. And this is their big bet that something that big is going to happen by the end of the year. So, all the news is finally going to hit. All the numbers are finally going to show up. 180 mil and 165 mil. And that's
not a hedge, dude. That's not hedging.
Right. Exactly.
Like if you look at pull up Flow Scanner, because I almost thought for a second, I was like, oh, I put like too big of a range on Flow Scanner because like there's no way that's what these numbers are.
Oh yeah, right there, QQQ SPY right there.
Dude, that's what we see after
today,
like 2 weeks.
Just today. Yeah.
That's like 2 weeks of Flow Scanner. Mm-hmm. I thought I was like ranged out 2 weeks to where I was like, wait, let me reset everything and like redo this because that has to be a glitch. Like,
seriously.
Like what?
That's nuts. And you can see here too, like Nvidia today, 130 mil to the 9 mil. You see it hitting those all-time highs. Flow Scanner is an incredible tool. Just get an idea of what sentiment throughout the day is. And I also want to talk to you guys here about, WaveX. It's coming soon, coming in the summer of 2025. So in the next few months, we're still testing out the final stages of it. But what the idea that we've had and the thing that we've been working on for WaveX is it's a graphing tool that takes all of the options that are coming in and allows you to visualize where the pressure is coming from. So is it pushing stuff up? Is it pushing stuff down? And it's going to help you guys get a gauge and get better sentiment with the flow in terms of not only daily but throughout the week and things like that. So for example, you very likely would start to see, if this was Nvidia today, where they're buying those calls along the chart, along the pricing of the chart, and see how it's been pushing it higher and higher and higher. And as a result, WaveX is going to be one of those those tools that will really help you out with your trading. So hope you guys are excited for it. Comment WaveX if you're in the chat, just to show a little bit of excitement. Give us some hearts, give us some emojis for WaveX, because we've got Chef working real hard on it, and we'd love to give him his flowers for putting together such useful tools for us. Anything else sticking out to you?
No, today we were just kind of like talking about like what people should like someone was asking what they should do if they had a 2K account, like would they play zero date options, that kind of stuff. And it was just kind of hanging out, listening to music, watching flow, calling out live levels. Nothing really stuck out though. I mean, if you notice, anytime a good, as biased as it sounds, a good indicator of how like crazy the flow is going, you can just look at my Discord channel, because like if I'm not like posting out patterns every hour or so, it's a pretty like choppy random day for the most part.
Reminds me, an update on our 1K challenge. Our account so far is down a little bit. The NU puts that we took are down about 40 something percent. NU had a big jump the other day that put those a little bit further into the red. Our wolf position is also down about 37% at this point. So the account is sitting at a $719 from that 1K. But we're looking at our charts, we're looking at our flow, and we've decided if NU breaks the 20-day moving average, then we will look to get out of that position, but it's still staying well below, just below it right now. Wolf also just did have some, let me pull that up. Wolf had some pretty bullishness come, in terms of just earlier this week. So we're just sitting on those positions. Again, our expirations for these are much later in the year. So we have until November for those $6, or was it, no, these $10 ones to play out. So we've got some time for the 1K challenge. Keep in mind, we've already discussed before, some of these that we pick out, sometimes you got to get kicked in the teeth for a little bit before you'll see those returns come. And I'll notify you guys in the Discord and in the Stacks Discord if we do decide to average down on any of those positions. We'll consider it. We do have a little bit more buying power still left, but we'll take a look as to how things continue to play out.
UUP.
I saw some calls just last week. 20, fairly small in terms of premium. Let me pull up the trading view. What is UUP? DBUSD. What is this? Mutual funds. Let's see. Long the US dollar. Okay, so that's why we're seeing problems with it. UUP goes long the US dollar and shorts the currencies of major US trading partners. So
Mm.
shorting the euro, Japanese yen, British pound, Canadian dollar, Swedish krona, and Swiss franc. So that's why you're seeing. So this chart, take a look at that chart right there, and then take a look at DXY. Right, you see that pop and come down. So UUP with expected US dollar weakness. I don't. Yeah, my wife's got the baby. He's probably just hungry right now. I had him all morning.
Go that baby.
He'll be fine. I'll get him right after this. Don't worry. I would just say I'm expecting more dollar weakness to come. So a lot of what's going on right now, you see U.S. oil as well. And right now we had that pop most recently. If we do see additional Middle East tensions, oil is a big player in that because a lot of it has to do with supply lines of, who's shipping who oil, and then the strait that they use is responsible for 30% of oil when it comes down to the how much volume moves through there. So I would say just off the macro side of things, I don't know. And I have a question too, is what got you into UUP? Because with stacks it was such a small print. And is it maybe something linked to your 401k or retirement account type of thing? I haven't heard of it till I just pulled it up right now. So
Yeah, he's actually not in stacks. I let him know about 130 though, to grab flow, because he was just chilling in our stream earlier, and then I posted out our link.
Okay. Yeah, if that's the case, yeah, UUP, I think it's looking like it's approaching that $27 mark with that drop. I would not be surprised to see it come down here. You have a whole lot more volume of people trading in this range. Let me draw that rectangle. Say right here, you'll see, especially with here on our volume, you'll see people start to purchase it back up in the high $26 to $26.80 range. I think people will snatch it up a bit. But if it were to break down below that, you got a bit of a drop that could potentially come for it. So yeah, I haven't heard of UUP before till I just put it up.
I haven't either.
First time I pulled up this chart. First time I pulled up this ticker and even looked at it before. But yeah, it looks like it's bullish, the dollar index. So shorting all the other currencies. Right now the dollar is not. I mean, the dollar's strong in terms of worldwide. It's the reserve currency of the world. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of bearishness with DXY at this point, and I'm expecting it to go a bit further. I've got my alert set for it to drop below 97 and 53. I think it's headed down toward these previous ranges. Anything else, you guys? Anything else you want us to take a look at? That's it, guys. Wanted to remind you guys, subscribe to Max's Substack. It is a great way for you guys to get information. What he does is a lot of the things that are going on in the markets. Also, if you're not a direct member of our Discord or Stacks, he does email out bits and pieces of what's going on. Let's look at Riot. I know Riot, we had a...
I actually just put out one too.
Yeah, Max is always sending stuff out in terms of it, getting you guys an idea of what's going on in the markets, going on in Stacks. some shout outs and some potential plays. Every now and then you might be able to get a play or two out of it. A part of it is, in terms of all the juicy stuff, it is behind a paywall, but it's nothing so major that you guys can't afford it. So definitely something to take a look at. Check out his Substack. In terms of his YouTube, his Trades and Gains YouTube, I would definitely, I'm subscribed and I've got my notification bell for it already. So make sure you guys go ahead and add that to your watch list. Our Stacks Beehive, I try to send out a Beehive newsletter every week, just reviewing what's gone on. It also notifies you of our live streams, notifies you guys of what's gone on with Stacks AI. My monthly back tests are on there as well, so you guys can get an idea of how Stacks AI returns are doing. Our website, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, you guys know what to do, even TikTok as well. Make sure you guys subscribe or follow. That way you get all the up-to-date information from us there. In terms of Riot does also have that, it was a small market cycle look to it over here. Riot has to do with Bitcoin. So we got to see, it's still in this range. It's got to break up above that $11 range for it to really start to see some breathing room above. As you can see, there's a lot of buyers and sellers in this range. This orange line that you see that comes out, it's called the point of control. So on a volume profile, that's where the most buyers and sellers happen to stand. A good way to consider it too is, let's just say this is the chart of all the Apple iPhones, or you can think of your favorite thing. Could be the Louis Vuitton purses. It could be basketball shoes. Let's just say this is the market in terms of where those iPhones or those shoes have been traded at, where people have bought and sold them at. And on the right side with this profile, it shows in green and red the number of buys and sells that have happened at that specific price range. So, up here, there's very few people that have purchased at that $48 and $40 all the way above $20. A lot fewer people willing to trade. Now, what does it mean, this point of control? This $11 range is basically where everybody's buying and selling, and that's where the most amount of transactions happen. So when you are below that point of control, when price reaches that point of control, what do you expect to happen? You expect people to start trading. You expect people to start hitting that buy or sell button, simply because that's the range and that's the most common price. So let's say, those Nike shoes, or let's just say for an iPhone, the main price that people are buying and selling at is $1,000 right here. Well, price dipped to 800, let's say, and it's coming back toward that 1,000. You're gonna expect people that are commonly in that market to go ahead and try to sell those phones for their profit. Now, if you're above that point of control, when it comes back down to that line, what you can expect is people are going to try to snatch it up. So it's definitely a line in the sand that once it's broken, it's either going to act as resistance or support, and it's a way for you to gauge where that support happens to be. The thing about it too here is it's a little rough with my weekly chart, because it becomes this huge block here. As you can see, a lot of purchasing and buying and selling down here, just because the numbers and the ranges get so big over here. VRVP is what it is on here, and I can also go in here and I can change the inputs and the row size. So if I make the row size of 5, oh no, that's the wrong direction. Need it to be 99. So the idea is you try to take all the data from before and get an idea of where the buyers and sellers happen to sit in terms of the price. So right now, Riot, we're right below it. If we are to break above it, we can definitely see it head up further. But I will point out, like I said, Riot has a lot to do with Bitcoin and with the price movement of Bitcoin. So BTC, the US dollar, we are seeing it did just hit all-time highs again recently, chopping around a little bit, making a bit of a bull flag. How long that bull flag is going to take for it to play out is a big question. And it is, Bitcoin's always been a speculative investment, so you know, time will tell with it. There is a lot of people trying to pump it, and there's something here. Let me give you this one. If I change this to a logarithmic chart, I go into the weekly. There's a lot of people that use this and say, well, Bitcoin's going to respect this overall line in time. So it can always jump up higher, but when it comes back down to that line, that's where it's going to continue to go higher. So just something to consider. Down the line, yeah, Riot could go higher, but isn't Riot have to do with the mining of it, right?
Yeah, they're miners.
So if they mine and you know, as long as the price of the energy costs don't go up too high, and you know, they make money from that. But if you take a look at their earnings, they haven't been reporting great earnings over time. Here, look at this. Their net margin is a negative 183%. So when they're able to start and, you know, show those profits, then we'll start to see. Stacks does have that print that, you know, gives it a bit more hope. You know, that's what I've always said. Stacks will help lay a foundation of what somebody out there expects for that stock and expects for price. So the expectation for Stacks in here for Riot is that by the end of this year, so 12/19/2025, it's got to be over $12. For this to make significant money, it needs to be over $13.50 is what this is saying. It's trading at 9.52 when they got in. It's trading at almost $10 now, so they are what, 40 something cents, but the contract might not have moved much just because of time decay. So something to consider with Riot. Anything else, you guys? Keep an eye out for Max's live streams too. He's gonna do it again tomorrow, he says. From open to close, he's gonna have the flow up. He's gonna, you know, go over what comes up as interesting and potential plays for you guys to get in. He's already had.
We also do live charting.
Yep. So Max is doing all of it. I'll try to jump in and try to make a guest appearance on his stream tomorrow. And we will be doing our live stream here, our closing bell live stream on a weekly basis. I am on summer now for you know, with basketball and things like that, so I will try to do another one of these later in the week or next week. I do have to get our Stacks AI backtesting up, but that one's going to be a bit shorter just because we didn't have too many of them this month. Oh, let's take a quick peek back over at MU as we close this off. Not bad. Well, it's kind of a flag. Not as big of a push as it originally was, but it is up.
I mean, we all knew it was going to retrace.
It's only up 3%. At the highs, it was up about 8 or 9,
Jesus.
8%. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm expecting a gap down into pre-market tomorrow because I have a feeling that news is not going to get much better for them as the night goes on.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. Oh, let's see. QS jumped earlier. Yesterday. Yeah. Okay. Comment Stacks for me if you guys made it this far with us. We'll be back at this. I'll do another one sooner than next Wednesday. But I'm gonna leave it up to you guys. If you guys show us enough love, we're more likely and more inclined to jump on here, give you guys a little bit more of a conversation and analysis. But always happy to do this for you guys. Don't forget to like, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you guys will be notified anytime that we do go live. Yeah, happy to do this for you guys. This is our closing bell show with Eric and Max. We will see you guys in the next one.